Tonight, we're honored to welcome our guest, Hope Fitzgerald, who's joining us from Massachusetts. She has been a dedicated seeker of truth, healing, and wisdom for 25 years. Her expertise in spiritual dowsing has helped people transform their lives. In 2010, a series of visions introduced her to the infinity wave, a simple yet powerful enlightenment tool. This wave is a 10th dimensional energy of love and compassion and was sent to help us evolve in terms of strife. She was then directed through dowsing to launch a series of wave energy evolution workshops comprised of powerful channeled practices for those seeking to make an evolutionary leap and miraculous healing breakthroughs. In 2011, she created the Wave Energy Center for Conscious Evolution, dedicated to the positive and expansive development of the individual, the community, and the earth. So tonight we'll be introducing this infinity wave, getting to know Hope a bit better. And because she says this gift of higher dimensional energy has been washing over the planet since 2011 and can be a tool for healing, upliftment, and spiritual evolution, something we're all longing for, aren't we? So welcome, Hope.
Thank you so much, Janice. Pleasure to be with you and everybody tonight.
Yes, well, so great to have you. It's so exciting. So tell us a bit more about your life and how you came to all this, how you came to awakening, the spiritual work, and your discoveries. What started all this off? How did you come to it?
Well, you know, I think like many of us, I had inklings when I was a very young person, and I had a mother who was very open-minded and always kept a little hidden book of some kind of spiritual this or that, next to her bed.
Yeah.
And I was very curious about that. But I was very curious about God. When I was 9, I asked my mother to take me to all the different houses of worship in the town because I wanted to try each one of them on and see which one I liked, and finally just kind of went along with the family to the Presbyterian church. And that took me along until I was about 17 and I learned how to meditate. And then that started to open up into many more things. I went to the Findhorn Foundation in Scotland when I was 21. And that pretty much blew the cork out. And that probably was my first energetic awakening. And there were these people who would teach at our house. They taught hands-on healing. They taught reflexology. I had my first past life regression. All these kinds of things were going on when I would come home from college. There'd be 20 people in our living room doing any number of things, which was unusual at the time. So I really thank my mother always for being such an open-minded person, because I really took it and ran with it. And I just kept exploring different kinds of healing, different kinds of, I had tons and tons of books that I'd read about people's experiences with channeling or with, having a being appear in their living room or, any number of things, very, very interested in near-death experiences and a lot of death-related stuff. Not in a morbid way, but I started reading Elizabeth Kubler-Ross when I was in high school, just because I was interested. And, so these big themes of life and death were with me my whole life. And at the time, I became an actress. a director. I was a professional singer. And so that was really where my focus was. But I always had this side track of spirituality and spiritual growth. But it was kind of quiet. I
Mhm.
learned when I came back from Findhorn and I was busted wide open and I was manifesting on a dime and just it was amazing. I was so high and I tried to talk to people about it. I talked to my best friends and they looked at me and I was like, oh, she's crazy. So I learned to be quiet. And many years later, my kids were little and I had, as an actress, you develop a lot of ways to earn an income. And
Mhm.
so, but so I had a lot of those in my pocket, but then I was a mother of two under two in Dallas, Texas, and didn't have a lot of friends, didn't speak the language, so to speak. And, so I tried to make some money by starting this thing. I named it staging, and this would be, rearranging people's houses and getting them ready to sell. Well, as a part of that, I was always wanting to learn feng shui.
Mhm.
And one of my clients said, oh, there's this feng shui class, and this young gal will, maybe there were 8 of us in the class, and we'll do a night a week in each person's home. And that's how Tuesday nights, so for 8 Tuesday nights, we had feng shui class. Well, when they came to my house, she walked in with all these wire hangers in her hand and a pair of wire cutters. And she proceeded to sit down and start cutting them up into these L shapes. And I couldn't figure out what she was doing, but then she started talking about dowsing. And the thing is that and I won't talk about this too much, but in feng shui, there are 3 different schools of feng shui, and sometimes they conflict. So an easy way, instead of doing the math that you can do to solve your problems, you can douse. Now, of course, I knew about pendulums and all of that. I didn't realize that was dowsing. So she hands everybody these little wire L-shaped things. They look like this. You can see
Mhm.
L shape, right? But they didn't have a sleeve like mine has a sleeve. So it turns the wire, everything turns independently inside the sleeve. And she brought everybody, but I had to watch because I knew where the water main was, and she wanted the group to find the water main to my house. And they did. They took little baby steps, and one by one, their little wire hangers crossed like this. I said, whoa, what's that? I want that. So I took my little wire hangers and I started asking very simple questions like, is it in my highest good to go to the grocery store today or tomorrow? Stuff like that didn't matter. But then I started to do whatever they said. And over time, the questions got more complicated and more risky. And I would go with what they said, even if it didn't make complete logical sense to me. Well,
Mhm.
this was the beginning of a beautiful relationship. And um, I basically did that for the next 15 years or so, really on my own, developing it. And then I would start doing it for other people. Um, so by 2010, we were no longer in Texas. We were living in Massachusetts. We had moved there based on information from my dowsing rods. And turns out we had sold our house like at the last moment of the peak of the 2006, real estate boom disaster. But we got out of there and moved to Massachusetts. And then in 2010, meanwhile, I'm still developing my spiritual thing. I had become also a neurofeedback practitioner. So I was working with the brain a lot. And one of my kids was ADHD. So anyway, it was a very helpful tool in the home, but I was also a clinician at that point. Anyway, in 2010, I had a really rough year. Bad things happened, and with my family. And by by September, I was completely empty, spiritually, physically, emotionally, mentally, just really running on fumes. And I went out west to go to a sound healing workshop with Tom Kenyon, who's a wonderful sound healer. And basically, that became my kind of like a warrioress. I went in there just determined to wipe myself completely clean of all story, all history, all everything. And that's what I did with the help of Tom and his amazing ability to channel and chant. And when I came home, well, the very last practice of the very last day, I'd covered really all the territory. I just had one last question. I asked the question in the meditation. The answer came to me. The answer was so beautiful, so profound, that in my mind's eye, I went prostrate on the floor and in such gratitude. And out of me, I didn't say it, but pouring out of my being was, I am a willing vessel, do with me what you will. P.S. When you say that, be careful, because then stuff happens. So I went home and I was so delightfully empty. It was heaven. It was heaven. And then 3 days later, I was walking across my living room with my good friend Jan was there. And I stop in my tracks because I see this gigantic wave, 100 feet tall. It's beautiful. It's turquoise. It's gorgeous. But there's a little message that comes along with this big wave. And it said, this wave represents a push of evolution that is coming to the planet. It will be wrapping around the planet this year. So this was 2010, but they meant 2011. It would be anchored in by the end of 2011. And if you want to have an easier road, with this evolution, you should learn to swim with the wave or surf this wave. And that was that. And then it turned on its side and became kind of a curling wave like that, like a surfer might go, through the tunnel. And there was a message. Then basically the way that the physics of a wave works is that the water goes down, it pushes down into the seabed, the sea floor, to create the power to be able to crest. So the message was, leave all your knowing, all your book learning on the shore, go to the earth, go down like the wave does into the earth for your wisdom and to the wisdom keepers. And then mix that knowledge with whatever this incoming wave thing was. And then that curling C letter kind of shape just turned into this figure eight, standing figure eight made of flowing water, which I think you have an image of.
Yes, I have here.
There it is.
Here it is. Let me put it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a mathematical infinity sign, but turned
Yes.
upward.
And this is the closest approximation to what I saw.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no byline with that, no explanation, but it hung out in front of my forehead. And I wasn't used to having visions, but it hung out in front of my forehead for a couple of days. And so fortunately, because I could douse things that were beyond a regular yes and no, that's how I had developed my practice with my rods. I was able to sit down and discern what it was we were dealing with here. And to make a long story short, found out that it had this name, the infinity wave, that it was a representation. Okay, that's a representation of a 10th dimensional energy. So 10th dimensional energy is so refined. We on planet Earth really don't know. We don't even know how to touch that. And yet it was being given to us as a way to mix with, like when you take that 10D energy and you apply it to 3D, what happens is everything lifts up. I'm not saying where it goes, but it definitely pulls up and out of 3D. Really, in my experience, to its highest potential, to the highest place. So what they were saying was that mixed into this watery flow, inherent in that water, is this 10th dimensional love and compassion. Highly, highly refined. And I thought, okay, I'm really losing it now. This is utterly crazy. And it's so ironic because I had so many books about this kind of thing, but didn't think it would happen to me. And so anywho, then I received instruction that I was to start teaching about this, which I did not want to do. And they said, well, you need to do a weekend a month, starting in January 2011 through September. The workshop will be 3 weekends. So it basically was three weekend workshops. And I had no idea what I was teaching. I looked up, I thought, they keep talking about evolution. Nobody was talking about evolution in those days. And I said, well, I guess this is kind of like conscious evolution. You're being conscious of your evolution. We're used to having evolution happen in the background. Now we're bringing it into a conscious state. So I looked up conscious evolution. Barbara Marx Hubbard was the only one who had worked with that term, not in the way that I was, or I was being asked to. And I just didn't want to have anything to do with it. I was very happy being in my little private spiritual track, that ran parallel to my life or interwoven. I was a sound healer at that point. I mean, I ran meditations. I did a bunch of things, but it was still kind of right next to me, Anyway, they reminded me that I had said, I am a willing vessel, do with me what you will. And they said, you said that, here we are, here's your job. Okay. So of course I had to go forward, but I was terrified. And I learned later why, some of the reasons that I was terrified. I was terrified beyond normal. It didn't make rational sense, except that there were deep-seated memories of earlier lifetimes where I had done similar things and hadn't gone so well. So anyway, I then started, I didn't know what to teach. So I went back to my Findhorn days, and they had taught a theory of evolution that Teilhard de Chardin had put forth. And it had to do with these things called peduncles, which is a great word. It's actually in French, it's pedunc, and it's a biology term. It's, if you think of a tulip, it's the stem comes up and then becomes the flower, and it's where they join that is the pedunc. So another way to picture it, and easier for explanation, is maybe a wine bottle that's wide at the bottom and then starts to taper, right, until it gets to the neck. And that tapering place to the neck is the peduncle. So Teilhard de Chardin said, well, everything it has a God spark in it, and the atoms have a God spark in it, and everything is moving and spiraling. And so you can imagine in the wide part of the bottle that you've got all these atoms, and they're moving and spiraling around. But as they get towards the neck, they start to bump into each other. It starts to get crowded. And so that causes friction. And then what happens is an alchemical process as you move through that neck of the bottle, and now you have a slightly larger, slightly more elegant molecule. And then this process of peduncle squeeze, emerge, peduncle squeeze, emerge, right? He would track all of our evolution that way. And he went forward in time to what he termed the Superman. I call it superwoman, superhuman. And this was a being that had a huge capacity in their mind. He actually showed it with a larger head. And he said the person, the superhuman of the future, will have much more capacity as extrasensory perception, manifesting, like all kinds of abilities that we know there are avatars that can do and have done through time. But that was his projection, that we were continuing toward this place. And so I put some of that together with science that I had been following for 10 years, how science and spirituality come together. And then I sat down and I, all of a sudden, you know, these voices would come through me and these practices kind of just came out. So I worked with those. Long story short, at the end of the first 9 days of the workshops, 333, when we got to the end, I could look back and see that all of these practices were a step-by-step evolutionary movement to take people from one place to another. And what was remarkable was that every person who was in that original group and then subsequent groups changed dramatically, and their lives changed dramatically. And I would just think, oh my gosh, this, because I was standing back a little, does this really work? Is this all made up in my head? Like, but then I saw that it was changing people, and even their faces changed. So, you know, I repeated that. And so then at the end of that year, and then I'll stop talking for a minute, but my guide team had been telling me that this was meant for the whole wide world. And I was living next to a sheep farm in Western Massachusetts. Like, what? You know, if you really want this to go the whole wide world, I'm putting that in your hands. I have no idea how to do that. Well, December of that year, 2011, I just happened to meet somebody who at that time was really the forerunner of these internet shows, you know, where you do internet shows kind of like we are, but she had 500,000 people on her list around the world. And I didn't know who she was, but she told me she wanted to work with me, and that launched everything. She had me come out to California, record the practices, and boom. So that's when I knew that this really was meant for the whole wide world, because the chances of meeting her were slim to none. And if I had tried, I never would have, you know, it just happened. Yeah. So that's the beginning of everything.
Okay, well, I'd just like to tell everybody now, because you're going to describe the infinity wave and give us an experience of it, that I got to know you, or I got know of you, way back in the summer, and sitting in with Charles in an apartment, waiting, trying to find a house to live in. And we would go out outside in the mornings, and it was like 90-some degrees, but the humidity was down, and there would always be a breeze. We'd sit down at this bench, and there'd always be a beautiful breeze. Then I had taken your I think it's a little class or whatever. Anyways, introducing the infinity wave. And you demonstrated how to use it. And I decided that this one morning there was no breeze. So I decided to put my heart out to what I call the angels of the wind and weather, whatever you want to call it. Everything has consciousness. So I did this exercise to send my heart and energy and the infinity wave to the angels out there. Within 10 seconds, a breeze started. And it continued when I thought, okay, that's a coincidence. So next morning, there's no breeze. And I did the same thing. And the breeze came up. Oh my goodness, she's onto something. I got more and more interested in you and started studying it. And I had already taken this class and so that's what may be in store for us. And it's very interesting that we are gifted this energy at this time. Isn't it? I mean, when there's all this turmoil and we're also evolving and the energies of this earth, which we've already talked about in our group, are coming into a higher vibration and all of that. And you said in your little booklet, introducing the infinity wave, which I think it's a part of taking that first little course, isn't it? You can download this. Okay. You said, talking about your nervousness and everything, you said, thankfully, I felt so supported and held by the loving beings who had become my constant companions, that it gave me the courage to risk sharing their unusual messages. You mentioned otherworldly beings and so forth in another piece of your writing. Who were they and how did they communicate with you?
Well, as I said, when I started dowsing, it started a relationship with, I wasn't sure who or what, but, and that was fine with me. I really didn't need to get all attached to what it was. But I was learning to trust it with the welfare of my family. You know, it was not a small thing. And the more that I dowsed for other people, I started to hear things and see things. So I knew that they were working with me with dowsing for other people as well. Then when I just started to channel these practices, my voice would change dramatically and my whole body rhythm would change depending on who was coming in. And it seemed to be, I always had this image of a revolving door that whoever was wanting to deliver the next practice, and I only did one at a time, you know, sometimes they would feel like very different energies. Again, I didn't really care who it was. And then down the road, a piece, probably in 2014 or something, a friend of mine brought some friends over that she had made at the dowsing conference, which I then later found out about, and found out I wasn't alone by far. And she came over with them, and one of them had designed something called a divine message board. This looks at first glance like a Ouija board, but the symbols are all very different. They're very high frequency symbols. So there's a light being, there's an angel, there's a Merkaba, there's Merlin, who apparently orchestrated the design. There's a white rose and a dragonfly. Anyway, she brought this board in, and then it starts to fly all over it with her planchette. That's the thing that goes on top. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. I should get one of those. And that's when I started to find out who I was talking to. Well, it turns out that Merlin, if you had told me, anyway, Merlin became my instructor on how to use the board. And took it from gobbledygook to sentences to, you know, smooth sailing. And then I started to, I was approached by a being called Zakaya. Zakaya described, I'll say himself, but you know, as the maker of sound. Zakaya said he sat at the right hand of Creator. The Creator would have a burst of creation. Zakaya would sound that creation, and then it would, you know, go off. So he had a task for me, so I did that. Then I heard from Archangel Abraham, who is the same Abraham as with Abraham Hicks. And turns out Abraham and I have a kind of sibling relationship. He gets embodied when I'm not, and I get embodied when he's not. And he helps me out with a lot of the nuts and bolts of how things work. And then I started to hear from, I started to hear from the Holy Family. I started to hear from Yeshua and Mary Magdalene. And that took on, that's a whole story in and of itself. And that relationship has continued. Then I've heard from just a wide variety of beings, different angels, all the archangels. E.T., I have an E.T. friend named Tak who comes in every now and then. We heard from Sitting Bull. I'm about to lead some of these lovely ladies on a trip to the Southwest in 10 days. And Sitting Bull came in to speak to us. So it can be a wide, Buddha has come, a wide variety. And it just seems that whoever is appropriate for the moment or for the people gathered at that time will come in.
Wow. Okay, so we're going to get into a little bit more of an explanation of the infinity wave, if you'd like, but I'd like to read another little piece from this booklet here. And your talk about the infinity wave, it says, if taken advantage of without resisting, it could provide an opportunity for accelerated, smooth personal evolution. I underlined about 4 times that word smooth because as you know, throughout spiritual history and practices and everything, and Buddhism and Zen and so you name it, we have to meditate for 20 years. We have to do all kinds of shadow work. We have to do, this and that and the other thing. And maybe we'll get there kind of thing. At least that's how I take it. So you're talking about a smooth personal evolution. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I know it seems to be too hard to believe, and sometimes it feels too hard to believe. Yeah. But here's the thing. If we're going to evolve, we're going to need something very, very different. And one of the things that they communicated to me was that we don't have time to go to a cave and look at our belly buttons. We actually need something fast. So Yeshua has explained to me that this is the next iteration of a Christ consciousness. So you can even think of the fish, and it being cut off, and now this gives it the full thing. It's a different order of magnitude of energy. So it's not that we don't confront our shadows. It's not that we don't have some of those things happen, but it is much smoother when we apply 10th dimensional love and compassion to ourselves as we're going through that. The real key here is, from that first vision, is not to resist. Don't resist change. The change, you're going to get into that wave and you're going to move with it, because if you stand there, you're going to get knocked down. So what I have perceived in others and in myself as well, because I was learning at the same time as I was teaching it, I noticed that I didn't respond in the same way to situations. I really changed fundamentally. So I'll give you an example. I went to California. That's where I met that woman who had the big list and all that. But the reason I went there was because a friend of mine was having surgery, a very, very kind of dangerous surgery on her neck that involved bone, muscle, and nerve. And there was only one doctor who really did this, and it was in LA. So I went with her to be her advocate. And she had, a friend of ours teaches hypnosis for surgery. And so my friend had studied it carefully. And one of the things they said was, write down what you want the anesthesiologist to say when you go under and come out, so that you're programming your subconscious mind. So my friend, being a very good student, had a beautiful piece of gorgeous paper with all her instructions on it. And she was holding it like this as we got through all the procedures. And we were finally waiting for her to speak to the anesthesiologist and go in to have surgery. We're waiting. And finally, this woman comes in, this small woman, and she's got a clipboard like this, and she's wearing this surgical cap that looked like a little mini pizza hat, kind of went out like that. And it had little red flecks on it. It was very unusual. Anyway, when she came and stood opposite me, I was seated at the feet of my friend and she was standing opposite me. She never looked at my friend. She never looked at her patient. She had her head down like this. Okay, what we're going to do today is blah, 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 and all this medicalese comes out. And I could see my friend getting really nervous because she's already scared. And that this woman wasn't going to be approachable, that she wouldn't do what she wanted her to do with the reading the thing. And a year before that, I would probably have said, hey, did you mind? My friend's really nervous. Would you mind just, somehow or other, I would have intervened in a nice way, but still, directed traffic. Well, having been through all these workshops and being fundamentally different, I just looked at her and I thought, I don't like this picture. I want a different one. And I said, the words I said were, I like your hat. And I didn't put any spin on it. It just came, I like your hat. But out of my solar plexus, unbidden, boom, this wave comes barreling out, and her head snapped up. She turned to look at my friend. She said, hey, how are you? I'm going to take such good care of you today. Oh, do you want me to read that? Oh, it looks like a beautiful recipe. What you've got. And my friend and I were just like, our jaws were on the floor because she went from being in an icebox to being chatty Cathy, warm, sunny person.
Yeah.
And all I could think of, we were absolutely shocked. And all I could think of was she was so depleted. She had no love and compassion in her being, probably working so many hours, that this massive blast of love and compassion, just made her rise to her better self. But here's the thing that's important to know. I couldn't have dreamed that up. I stood back and the energy did its work. And that is so different. We're not used to, we like to get in there, and even if we're got good intentions and all of that, the wave will do its thing. It will make all boats rise. And that's a different kind of thing. So yes, that in that way, it's much smoother. I didn't have to get all hot and bothered,
Well, I get it. When I had cancer, that's a tough thing. I had a pretty tough case of cancer, and I wanted to open up to a divine love, but I didn't know how to. But one night there was this presence of love, a high vibration, and the cancer disappeared.
Wow.
So, and people that have had near-death experiences or other episodes of being in the presence of a very high vibration, that vibration seems to just transform instantly things. Yeah. They come back into their incarnation completely transformed. Their addictions are gone. Their animosities are gone. The stuff that we work to get rid of, these shadow work is instantly gone. Yeah. So I think that this gift of the infinity wave, which is a 10th dimensional energy, could probably transform instantly.
Yes, it does.
Yeah,
it absolutely does. I have, I've had many conversations that would start out a little bumpy, and there's tension and all this stuff, and I just start running a wave with the person, and the next thing you know, they're sitting down, they're relaxed, they're laughing, they're telling jokes. It just you can send it to family gatherings, where maybe there was a spat and and you could send it ahead of time.
Yeah.
It's right. It's multidimensional. It's quantum energy. So I work with my clients from great distances. I can just sit here and I can wave. Well, I have been waving all of you, and it just puts us in connection immediately in the highest vibration possible. At least on this plane. I mean, in this existence, but it's so dependable that way, and it doesn't take a lot of work. And honestly, it doesn't take a lot of explanation. I mean, we're going into it tonight, but you could just tell a 3-year-old, just imagine this in the water, and boom, they're done. They're off to the races. So I like that about it, because it's not a religion at all. It's a tool that can stand beside any philosophy, any religion, any spiritual belief system, and enhance it.
Yeah.
Right. It's non-denominational. It's so clean. It's non-corruptible, because it's not a word. It's right. It's just a geometry. And of course, there's so much in the geometry. We have as above, so below. We have balance. We have the masculine, feminine. There's so much about the geometry itself that is beautiful. And the fact that when it moves around, it doesn't touch in the middle. There's a gap there. So it means that energy is infinitely going to flow. And the other beautiful thing about it is, whenever we run a wave, what I call run a wave, let's say from my heart to somebody else's heart, well, guess what comes back? I mean, everybody wins, so yeah, it's really been remarkable.
Well, let's talk about this infinity wave. How would you quickly describe it? Is it shaped in the infinity form? Does it flow in the infinity form, first of all?
Yeah, it's what you showed, but but where it crosses, it doesn't touch. There's a gap like that.
Yeah, right here. There would be a separation between this and this, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Doesn't see that, but there's a space in between the waves here.
There are two planes.
Right there, the center, right?
Yeah, there are two planes.
Right.
Yeah. So that they're really, it's really quite simple, and that's another thing that I form of like, I'll answer that question in a second. It's also representational of other things. So, well, let's say this, because I want to answer Teddy's question here. He's asking if this is a form of life force energy. And I would call it scalar energy. I would call it a multidimensional energy. Now, when you wrap yourself in it, in fact, if you do more than that, if you run it down into the earth, up, crossing across your midline, and then up over your head like that, then you get plugged in to earth energy and divine energy. And so in that sense, yes, it will deliver a life force feeling. But there's something else that is a life force energy that was introduced to me by that being Zakaya. And that's an energy called Ama. And that's a more balanced, more feminine, masculine, balanced form of chi. So, which is a life force energy. So that's a whole different thing that developed. I mean, once I opened the door to all this, then so many other things have been created as a result. Kathy's asking, when I said, I like your hat, was I envisioning the wave? No, I wasn't. No one was more surprised than I was. I literally felt this boom, pop out of my solar plexus. And that's when I realized what had happened. And I love that that happened that way, because I had nothing to do with it. And that way it's more proof to me that what the wave has said to me is that it is a living energy. So it's conscious. So if you invite it into your life, if you invite it in to dance with you, it's going to direct in some instances like that one, how it can be best used. You know, for instance, sometimes I would get a call from somebody, oh, can you send me a wave? I'm going in for a meeting with my attorney, or I'm going into court, or something's happening. And I would close, I'd say, sure. So I close my eyes, and it's fast. That's the other thing. It's so fast. You just close your eyes, you imagine the person, you wrap them in a wave, right? And usually I default to turquoise because that's my favorite color. And that's how the water first appeared to me. But there I was in the middle of envisioning that. And all of a sudden I saw her instead with 3 orange infinities all around her body. And I went, oh, well, okay, then, you know, that's what she needs. And I was being instructed, you know, it wasn't always me thinking it up, which I love.
Well, let's stop here and invite any questions. Anybody want to speak up, unmute yourself and ask a question or a comment or anything? Anybody?
Well, let me answer Kathy's second part of the question.
Okay.
Yes. Did you really like her hat, or did that come out unconsciously? No, I didn't really like her hat. It all happened at once. And I don't know. I just was saying, I want a different picture. And then boom, that all happened. So it's funny. It's really funny.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions? Go ahead, Ted.
Yeah, it's just amazing, Hope, you know, like everything's connected, like, you know, intention and heart space and stuff like that. It sounds like in the operating room, you know, you said like maybe subconsciously an intention and came from a heart space, and you can change the person instantly, you know. I've had several recent occurrences of that type of energy working. I think it's real similar to what you're talking about.
Yeah, sounds like it. And it's really, you know, a lot of people need just something to visualize. Not everybody does, but a lot of times what happens is, and there's a tender line here between manifesting something and intending, you know, setting an intention. A lot of time I have backed off from a lot of intention setting, because I've found that if I wave it instead, it ends up being better than I might have imagined. So intending almost keeps it too small. I want it to go as far as it can go, you know. So I let the wave loose on that and trust it to bring in the highest and best situation. The other thing about the wave is that it can be any size. It can be microscopic. So it can be used for pain. It can be used for calming the emotions really, really fast. I had a lot of experiences with when my kids were teenagers, and there were, you know, things happen when kids are teenagers. And this one particular night, my son, oh my God. And I just said, I have to step away because something bad's going to happen here. And I was so mad. And I went into my room and I was sitting on my bed, and you know, my whole body, especially my gut, right, was just like this. And I thought, wait a minute, just put a wave on it. So I did. And I started running a wave in my belly. And I was focusing on, and believe me, you can change the water pace. So you can make it like a rushing spring river, or you can make it like a little trickly brook. So I had that, I had those ocean waves going through my gut. And as I was focusing on that, it was like a little film opened up here. And I watched the conversation that I had just had with my son. And I saw where I really could have, I maybe added fuel to the fire. Meanwhile, I'm really focusing on my gut, but I see that. Then I see what I could say to make it better. And then I start laughing because it's so absurd, right? The whole thing was so ridiculous. And I thought I had been sitting there for half an hour. And when I opened my eyes, 5 minutes had passed. I had gone from rage to laughing in 5 minutes. Now, many of you may know this, but when women get very, very angry, the cortisol that comes rushing through their bodies, it takes 24 hours for that to dissipate. Not so with men. Men only take about 10 minutes. But women take 24 hours, which is why if you've ever had one of those, I'm sure we all have, right? That like a whole day, it's like, and you get to the next day and finally you start to feel a little better. That's why. Well, I thought, oh my God, I have a tool here that can cut that cortisol off short. So I'm not damaging my body, with all this toxic stuff running through it. So that is one of the best ways to use it. Sharon, did you want to ask a question?
I just have a question on the direction. Does it go vertical or horizontal, or does it make a difference?
Great question. The great answer is there is no wrong way to do it. There's no right way to do it. Any way you feel called to use it, it can go that way, that way, that way, that way. It could be an hourglass. It can be anything. And it's completely malleable. And I love that you can't go wrong, and that's the thing when, as I said, if you invite it in, it will start to inform you how it wants to be used. And you can use multiple waves at the same time. The wave can stretch to the sun, and beyond. This wave can go down into the center of the earth, and you with it. I mean, it's really fun. I'll say that. But it's one of the best things about it is not only the connectivity between people, but the connectivity with source and with the earth. So, I have studied shamanic work, and I very much am into the land, the elements, all of that, and working with the natural world. And I've also have this connection, we always say above, but it's really next to, and to wrap oneself in a way that goes down at the earth and above enhances the ability to communicate with both what I believe are equally spiritual realms. This is one of the things I've learned over the course of working with the wave and my guides. They have said, the spirit of the earth is every bit as important and as potent as what happens over here. We have not been taught that. We've been taught to be a little top heavy, but it's really this connection of the two. And isn't it interesting that we as humans are the ones walking around on the top of the earth? We're the ones that have access above and below. That's our blueprint, so we are the ones who can make manifest the requests from both those realms. And I find that to be fantastic. So anything that helps with that, anything that enhances my direct contact above and below is going to be a good thing. And I've found that the wave has been helpful in that regard.
I have a quick question. Uh, I suppose, how do you use the wave for self healing and self love and things like that?
Oh, well, that's the best thing of all, because that's the first thing that has to happen.
I know.
If anybody's going to evolve, we got to figure that out. So the practice that I'm going to do is the first toe dip on
Okay.
that.
Okay.
So I
Well,
think
wait then.
we can wait on that.
Okay. Great. Great.
But I will say that there's a practice that's just basically wrapping from head to toe
Mhm.
and having the water run very gently when you get in bed at night. And we call it the infinity cradle. And it's just so calming. If you wake up in the middle of the night with a bad dream or something like that, just wrap yourself in the wave, just imagine it and imagine that watery flow moving through you, and you'll go right out.
Okay. Let's go ahead. Rebecca. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, Hope. Thank you so much for telling us about all this. I feel like that there was a reason that I'm listening to this today, because I was kind of, I don't know, depressed, I guess, today, because I feel like I need help. I feel like, I've ramped up my meditation practices. I'm walking around, trying to be a good example, and, being kind, and, putting out love and compassion, and trying to raise my own vibration so that the people around me can be raised, all the kinds of things that we talk about that would be in a new earth. And there's just so many setbacks, right? It's tough to stay on the front lines sometimes. And this seems like a really useful tool to that. But I've, as far as getting help, I've expanded my meditation practice a lot to include, contacting, spirit guides. I also was interested a lot in near-death experiences after I lost my brother 6 years ago. I read everything that I could find on that. So I've recently been trying to contact spirit guides and angels and this and that, and asking for help and talking to trees, and I'm not getting anywhere with any of that. What is to make me think that I'm gonna not have the same experience with the infinity wave?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure you're not getting anywhere with any of that. I'm just going to ask, okay? Let's see, can I manage? Should I? Is all that Rebecca is doing to raise her vibration and keep on keeping on and evolving, is all of that for nothing? No, it's not. Okay, so is she making advancements even though she doesn't know it? Yes, she is. Okay, so it doesn't always show up in the ways that we expect, and I can't promise you anything with the infinity wave except that I think you'll enjoy it. And the potential is for much more than that. The reason why, so just to say this, there's something like I call the daily wave, and that's using it in daily life. Maybe you're standing at the checkout line and you can wave the person, or you can wave your neighbor or whatever, and you can start to play with it and see if you might get a smile, or you might get something might come back your way that would be a sign that something's different. So in daily life, they're just a thousand ways. When you're in traffic, you can wave the traffic. And the beautiful thing about that is, instead of getting agita about it, you'll calm down. But it also, things start to, it's kind of like Ganesh, things start to move. So just play with it and not make it too heavy. What we're going through, Rebecca, is incredibly intense. We're being flooded with incredible light. and yet that can be destabilizing. And the atmosphere is full of all kinds of stuff that is in opposition to what you're doing. So I feel you. I have days like that too, believe me. And I have to reach down and I have to use all my tools. I have to use the wave. I have to use my dowsing. I have to use my channeling. I have to use everything I can to remember who I really am. And remember that I'm a creator. Remember that it might not be showing up in the way that I expect it to. And be okay with that. You know, so I would keep on keeping on. And, you know, it's great that you're part of groups. I do a Monday meditation almost every Monday. If you ever want to dive in, join that. There are a bunch of us here who do that on a regular basis. And we've created quite a nice little raft to go through the rapids together on. And,
Okay.
you know,
Thank you.
so yeah, so that's there too. But it is all happening. You may not see it yet, but it is happening.
Thank you. Thanks for the encouragement.
You're welcome.
St. Angeline.
I just have a quick comment I'd like to share. I receive this little booklet every month, a journal. It's Ascended and Free. Ascendedandfree.org is the website. And it's very cosmic. And they continually keep talking about the next life wave coming, capital letters. The next life wave coming is the building of this permanent age of spiritual freedom. So I just wanted to throw that out because it's a phrase I love, the next life wave coming.
Well, thank you for sharing that. You know, it's interesting because it's the kind of thing where, you know, when you start to become aware of something, all of a sudden you're aware that it's all around. But when this big wave came in, I wasn't here. People weren't talking about waves so much. And by the way, the infinity sign was nowhere to be found. I looked that whole year, 2011. I looked at packaging. I looked for jewelry. I looked everywhere. And then January 2012, remember they said it's going to wrap around the planet, anchor in at the end of 2011. January 2012, somebody hands me a cappuccino with the infinity sign in it. And I went, oh, here we go. And, you know, within 2 years, the infinity was the #1 tattoo for women. And Antonia's laughing because she's she knows. And all of a sudden, you know, everybody has it in their logo and they don't know why. We know why, but you know, it is this wave of energy. It is, and the way it's represented in this infinity sign, I believe, but it is a wave of energy. And they talk about it coming
like continuous.
Yes.
Infinite, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love that life wave. You know, that sounds wonderful.
Okay, we've got about 15 more minutes. Hope, do you want to go into your exercise? You want to explain more about the infinity wave? And
I could talk for hours about it, but I think
okay.
everybody's probably full up at this point. Unless there are any last questions. I think Kathy's asked something. Hold on one second.
Kathy?
Having difficulty visualizing and creating the space between the parts of the wave. Let's see. Okay, so here, I don't know if you can see that. So you see how the top one seems to be over the rear. Can you see what I'm saying? I'm not making much sense. This line is riding over this line, but they don't touch. They're independent. So it goes like that. Does that make sense, Kathy?
Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Okay,
you.
good. I used to have a pendant that was, but I don't have it anymore. Yeah, I think,
Could I just say one thing? This is Kathy.
yeah,
I just want to say I've been using it a lot. And like you said, my son and his significant other were having some real difficulties, and I just didn't want to get involved emotionally. So I started sending the wave, and I'm telling you, the whole emotional strife just disappeared. I mean, and I do it over their house, and it really does. I'm getting the chills as I tell you, because it really does work. Even though I wasn't aware of the space, it was working.
you know, I'm so glad you said that. And it's kind of magical, and we kind of rub our eyes, you know, and can't believe it because our consciousness is too limited sometimes for magic, you know. But it really is a kind of magic, and it's using energy. The other thing is that I guess what I became aware of as I was learning the wave and learning how to apply it, I became very aware of how malleable reality is. And when we know everything looks solid because the molecules are moving, the atoms are moving very slowly, but really there's so much space in between everything. It's very malleable. And when we apply even just good thoughts, prayers, all of those things, it will, we know, adjust reality. This is a tool that's super powered, right? It's just, and you don't have to work hard. You don't have to go, okay, what I really, really want, what I really, really want. No, you just throw a wave on it.
Yeah.
Go, show me the daisies, you know, it's gonna be good, whatever it is. So I think that for the kind of rapid change that we need to do now for our evolution, this is the gift from a loving universe for us to be able to do that.
Okay, if there are no other questions, let's have Hope demonstrate it now, or give us a little bit of an experience with it.
Okay, so,
Okay,
well, I loved your meditation at the beginning, by the way. Thank you for doing that. All right, so let's just get comfy and settle back and close our eyes. And I'm going to begin by asking you to imagine that from the crown of your head down to your sacrum, there is a tube. We're going to call this the pranic tube. We breathe through this tube. First, imagine that you are at your heart center and you exhale deeply down through the tube, down into the earth. The tube extends down into the earth. Exhaling deeply, any heavy energies, anything that needs to be released, exhale down into the earth and breathe back up into your heart center, that which the earth has to offer you, whatever that is. And just doing that a few times, breathing down, deep, deep exhales, releasing and bringing back up the beautiful, generous gifts of the earth into your heart center. This is a great way to connect with the earth. And now switching the focus from the heart center, exhaling up and out through the crown like a fountain. Inhaling back into the heart center, the gifts that realm has to offer you, whatever they may be. Every time you exhale up and out, you expand your field. And breathe back into the heart center. The love, the light, the wisdom from above. Once again, exhaling up and out. Good. Now, Now that we have the breath working, let's focus on the heart center. And imagine floating in your heart center, there is a little infinity wave, a little figure 8 made of flowing water. And all you need to do is observe it. If you need to use your finger to trace it on your heart to get it going, that's fine. And as you're observing this little wave, you notice what color it is, what direction it is turned to, and the pace of flow of the water. And you might feel a little something in your heart. You might feel a little tingle or a little movement or softening, or not at all. Just notice. All right, now we're going to invite the wave to turn on its side. So it's parallel to the floor with one loop facing one rib cage and the other loop facing the other rib cage. And now as we breathe, we're going to slowly begin to inflate those loops almost like balloons. And what you'll start to feel is a kind of stretching sensation. Keep imagining the water flowing in that figure 8. And keeping the wave small for now, stretching a little bit at a time. The wave is now going to be showering you with its most refined compassion. Compassion for you and your walk on this earth. Compassion for all the ways you may try, may succeed, may not succeed. All the stumbles, all the bumps. Infinite compassion for all the trials and tribulations. Compassion for those down days. And for the ways we might feel inadequate. Yet we continue to try. Now this infinity wave in your heart is stretched partway across your chest. And it might start to feel a little sticky, like it can't stretch anymore. And if that's the case, turn up the watery flow and let the water do the work. Because now we are going to be bathed in infinite love. A highly distilled love. A love that is endless. A love that is willingly showered upon you. For all the ways you love. For all your dreams and visions. For all the ways you reach out, doing the best you can. at any given time. Stretching the wave now wide across the heart, widening the chest. With a heart this wide, it feels quite vulnerable, and yet we are held in such love and compassion. We know it is safe. Safe to be this open, this unguarded. Allow this love and compassion to soften your heart like it once was. This love and compassion is always available. And anytime you have a hard moment, you can put this wave right into your heart center and let it do its thing. Now just allow the wave to shrink back to the size that feels most comfortable to you. And if you like, you can ask it to remain in your heart center to continue to run without you consciously needing to direct it. And when you're ready, you can come back to the room.
Thank you very much.
Mm.
I feel vulnerable and open. Any other feedback from anybody?
Thank you. That was amazing. And, I could feel the physical sensations as you were describing them, the heart opening, the vulnerability. I never felt the vulnerability in such a physical way before, I think, because I just blocked it out. Because I didn't want to feel the pain of it. And this is so much more than just hearing you are loved. It's feeling you are loved.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Karen?
I just wanted to mention, as I often do, for anybody who hasn't been to Hope's website, that many of the Monday night meditations are there to listen to. And like Rebecca said, they're wonderful. So that's something
Thank you, Karen. Thank you.
Yeah. It just fits in, it fits so well with what we already practice, like when we meditate, we bring in the light and we ground ourselves into the earth. It just that fits in the heart space just so perfectly.
Nice. Beautiful.
Yes.
Well, I've done that practice, I don't even know how many times, but it never fails. I always feel so much better afterwards myself. So I'm glad that it was meaningful for all of you too.
Yeah.
Oh, it was pleasure being with you and meeting some new people. And, you know, I know that I'm just the Johnny Appleseed of this technology. I consider it a technology. But one thing that I can say is that it used to take a lot longer to teach it. And now people get it much faster. And when they tap into it, they feel it immediately. It used to take longer, but now there's a morphogenetic field that's been created through the last 12 years of teaching it and sharing it, and people sharing it with others. So I encourage you to spread the word. Please use it, bring it to groups, bring it to your families. It's free. And, you know,
Yeah, speaking of your website and being free and everything, let's talk a little bit about connecting with you. And your website is beautiful. You've got these meditations that one can download for free. There are articles, your blog post. Speaking of opening to love, here's a quote from your most recent blog post that I love, the vibration of harmony. That is so much information, guys. It's our most recent blog post, and it's about the geometry. It's just about a lot of things. And really, really great. I printed it out. But anyway, here's a quote. It says, I always recommend doing the infinity wave with any natural being, even rocks. A few moments of waving effortlessly connect you on the frequency of love with just about anything. So I'm thinking, well, if I can't find love with something because of whatever, I'll just make love to the rocks, and that'll open my heart, and then I can love. That's just a cool suggestion, I think.
Did I put in the picture of me leaning with my head against the rock?
It's in the,
Okay.
it's in the blog post. Yeah, you're leaning against me.
Photo credit goes to Karen over here.
Oh, wow.
That was in Wales, and I was deeply in love with that rock.
Okay. And I love your website, Spirit Infinite Hope. And I thought that's real cool because we're all infinite and we're spreading you and your message. And you can take it in a lot of ways.
No, the beauty of that is that it's not about me. It's
no, I know. I'm kidding.
Us.
I'm teasing you.
Just to be clear.
I'm teasing you.
Okay.
But it's something easy to remember, and Spread Infinite Hope is something that we at the Envision, New Earth Envision is trying to do. And you have this website name, and it's so appropriate for this day. I really think that. And wow, thank you. If anybody have any more comments, I have one last question for her. Anybody? Okay. Okay. This is, you're being interviewed by, or being welcomed by, and being loved by the New Earth Visioning Project, this group. And in our project, we've done a lot of things. We've envisioned New Earth, helped to bring ourselves into a more New Earth-like, so to speak, and holding the vision for each other and anybody else who has a beautiful vision that helps bring in a new world where love is Lord. So this is my question. What is your vision? What is your hope? What do you think is the infinity's purpose? And what is your highest vision of the effects of the infinity wave on our earth and us?
When I wave the earth, or we wave the earth as a group, just like with everything else, it rises to its highest and best. It rises to its beauty and abundance, and it affects the people in the way that, in the sense that they rise to their highest and best. It would be precisely the way you and your group envision the new earth. And it's possible. This didn't come to me for no reason. It didn't ask me to change my life dramatically in order to do this kinds of teaching, which I never wanted to do or thought I should be doing.
Mhm.
It means to me that we're on this path, and any of us, such as you and your group, any of us who are dedicated, you know, we're laying the tracks. We're laying the tracks. So I think it would be just grand if everybody walked around in 10th dimensional love and compassion. That's all.
Okay. Okay. That's a beautiful vision. Everybody, it's like a world where love is Lord. So same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Same thing.
Same thing. Okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Hope, for joining us. What a beautiful evening this has been. I think everybody agrees with that here.
Oh,
And,
it was such a
thank you.
pleasure. Thank you,
Thank you.
Janice. And thank you, all of you, and to
Yeah.
my
It's,
peeps here.
It's
Thank you.
another tool. It's another tool for our toolbox.
That's it.
And
Yes, it is.
I love these things. I get so much out of these that I can put into use in my daily life. And I do appreciate it, Hope. Thank you so much.
My
Yes, thank
pleasure,
you.
Teddy. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. And I just, wow, what a wonderful evening. And next evening should be our next meeting 2 weeks from today should be another great meeting with Antonia, who is here. And she's like a sister soul to Hope, right?
Yes.
And they're both into geometries and energies and things a little bit differently, and prepare to have your mind blown again
Yes.
in a beautiful way.
Yeah, she's great.
So anyway, good night, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your presence. I can't wait to see you guys again, all of you, if you want to come. And we'll have another great evening. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Mwah. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Thanks so much,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Welcome.